Okay.
Oh, that was quick. It happened right away.
I know I had everything lined up. We're actually 1 minute earlier, like 1 minute before one, where we're early for the first time. So, and not late. But hello, everybody at the What's On at Elephant and Castle Facebook page. Today we are talking to Edwina Brocklesby, Irongran. I'm so excited about this. I feel like I already want to be adopted by you, Eddie. Can you kind of just tell the EC community, the Elephant and Castle community, who you are and what you do?
Right. So yes, I mean, ironically, I started my social work career back in 1963 at the Elephant and Castle in that building that's right next to the skyscraper. So yeah, covering an area as a social worker, like the oval cricket ground and the flats behind there. So it's a real irony, isn't it? And then married, 3 children, and traveled quite a bit around the country because my husband was a civil engineer and moved from several counties. So we were in Northampton for quite a few years, Nottinghamshire, and then did finally come back down to London. I'm a social worker for 46 years, so that's the real history of me.
Nick.
Yeah, you're speaking with another social worker, so I think Melissa's going to jump right in here.
Oh, great.
Well, I was maybe still am a social worker, but in Canada. So I'm not so familiar with how social work looks like here and what the expectation or role is of social workers here, or the reception of social workers. Because in Canada, there's a bit of like, they're aligned with kind of institutional. I wasn't, but a lot of people saw social workers as part of the problem and the barrier. So maybe can we start talking about your experience as a social worker in terms of like almost healing approach or like community approach versus a top-down approach to?
Yeah, no, that's interesting because, oh, sorry, can you, oh dear, what's happened?
We're good. We can hear you.
We're good.
We can hear me.
And
so I pressed launch button again, launch meeting again. I can't see you. Oh, shall I just keep going?
Yeah.
Well, we can see and hear you fine.
Oh, can you? Okay. My frustration is I can't see you. Okay, so in terms of social work, yes, of course, there have been dramatic changes. I mean, I can remember a period back in 1970s, maybe, when, you know, we didn't understand abuse in the way that we do now. And a lot of my background was in adoption and fostering. You know, that's where I did a lot of my research too. So yeah, quite a mixed, but always childcare. I've never, until I started to run the charity I'm now running, I'd never really worked with older people at all. So this is quite interesting. Yeah. If you can just give me some advice about how I can see you again, that would be good.
Are you on a computer or an iPad?
Yeah, no. So if I press launch meeting, might I get you again?
I think probably you've brought up that window. So maybe, do you have maybe if you could drag your browser out of the way somehow?
Okay. Ah, I see you. Brilliant.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah, yes, yeah.
I'm just going to say, I mean, as we reach sort of the end of lockdown, I mean, clearly social work is going to be under a huge pressure, isn't it? Given, you know, what we know to be significant problems that are existing now, and, you know, how they're going to cope. I don't know. It's going to be very, very tough, isn't it? There's a lot of
yeah, I have a kind of a question to come into with regards to what you've seen over social work, because every social worker I've ever met, beautiful, caring, loving, giving it, like selfless to a level that I'm like, wow, I can't believe you do what you do. But they always seem to be fighting bureaucracy. They always seem to be fighting systems with the courts, with police, with, you know, with the systems where they're trying to care for, you know, for youth or for domestic violence, but there's barriers that they are always coming up against with regards to bureaucracy. How have you seen that change? And are you optimistic that the courts and other systems are actually changing, you know, to help victims instead of kind of making it hard?
I think so. I mean, I was the first generation of the courts appointing an independent social worker. They called it a guardian ad litem, to represent the child. And so you went in independently of the local authority and of the bureaucracy that you're talking about to represent the interests of that specific child. And I think that was the beginning of a very much more, if you like, child family focused court scenario too. You know, I used to get a bit upset, if I'm honest, at watching, you know, two barristers on either side of the fence, if you like, you know, having almost what you felt was their game, you know, and here's me caring passionately about the outcome of that particular situation. And I get it, but I found it difficult sometimes. But, you know, on the whole, I think the judges were always, you know, very, very careful to listen to what we were saying as well. And, you know, had also been themselves very well trained, the family court judges. So perhaps, you know, I think things have improved from the old days. Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot more knowledge and information around trauma and abuse and how it like really can play out in really different aspects of, especially around children, right? There's more awareness.
No, I think that's been massive. I mean, if you can imagine a scenario back in the 70s when we didn't appreciate sexual abuse, I mean, goodness, how could we not? But we didn't. You know, I remember a team of social workers in Wellingborough going over to America, learning far more and coming back and teaching us all. Gosh. But, you know, yeah, but I think people find that hard to believe that we didn't understand. Yeah,
it wasn't just part of the vocabulary. Sorry, Nick.
No, I'm just really like I just, again, I have this feeling we could sit here and talk to you. I want to know so much. I want to know so much about your experiences and also about your hopes. But you know, I'm just gonna share the screen quickly. This is the first time I've done this on this, but I would like to kind of ask you about this picture, if that's okay with you. This is you.
Oh yes.
This is you and the Queen. Eddie, please tell us more about this picture.
Oh, well, it was absolutely fantastic experience at Windsor Castle. And this was very much courtesy of the National Council for Voluntary Organisations, who invited me. I mean, this is a fabulous one-to-one, but as you go through the door, there were, you know, several hundred people who had had this similar privilege. But oh, it was fantastic. And then the Queen circulated, as did Princess Anne, and I was so impressed by her. You know, she really did want to know about Silverfit and how it was going. And I sort of looked at her and said, you look quite fit too. And she said, oh yes, how many times she was on a horse and how many miles she walked.
Can you tell us what is Silverfit and how did it get going?
Right, so when I was running an adoption agency, Parents for Children, so that was my sort of the end of my social work career, I also organised trail marathons down the Lee Valley to fundraise effectively for Parents for Children, the adoption agency. And so we'd start up at Ware and come right the way down to what became the Olympic Park, you know, and it sort of, we watched that transformation coming down the Lee Valley. So we called it 5 to go. 4 to go as we approached the Olympics. We had a year off then for the Olympics, by which time I'd retired from social work. And we set up Silverfit as a charity to get older people more active and fitter. So it came out of the legacy of the Olympics, really. So that was the beginning of Silverfit. And yes, we then sort of started in Hyde Park in a fairly small way, and then moved very quickly to Burgess Park, which you'll probably know, right next door to the Elephant and Castle. But, you know, it's my favourite park. It's my screensaver. Absolutely lovely. And our numbers built up then. So we offered people then the opportunity, and this will ring bells for Retribe too, the opportunity to sort of register when they arrived and socialise and have a cup of coffee and, you know, get to know each other. Then they had the choice of an activity. So they could do in Burgess Park, it varies from different venues, but they could do Pilates there. Or they'd go out Nordic walking, you know, with sticks. That does help balance and strength and conditioning.
I need some of those.
I want some. I've been thinking about those for a minute now. Yeah. Anyway,
it does make you. I'm not very good at it technically. I did it with Ruby Wax once, you know, at Crystal Palace, and she said, "You're not very good at this, are you?" I'm not. But yes, so a choice of activity for about 3/4 of an hour to an hour, and then back to socializing. So we call it a sort of social sandwich. But, you know, that links with what you're doing in Retribe, doesn't it? It's so important to get the local community socializing and coming back. And we know, because we've kept very, very good data of, you know, how people are feeling about everything. And we know that they come back because of the social element rather. Yeah. So, yeah, I think a very, very important message, really. And that's, you know, clearly one of the big issues at the moment, isn't it? The opportunities missed.
It's such the like kind of fun around it, where it doesn't feel like work. It feels like just building whatever it is you need to build. I don't know if this is a question, but maybe we could talk about the impact of the pandemic and the lockdown and what you've experienced as like kind of the, I don't know, breaking down of the will. I'm projecting right now because I'm struggling. I'm like struggling. But yeah.
I mean, when you look at it in comparison with what we were doing at the Elephant and Castle or within a mile, so we have the sessions that I'm telling you about on a Tuesday and a Thursday at Burgess Park. We were in the castle, the leisure centre there as well, doing spinning and what else was it? There was another activity there. Pilates, I think, and cheerleading, silver cheerleading at the Castle Leisure Centre. And then the third one was the community centre. You know, this is courtesy of Delancey and Get Living, who invited us to have session on a Thursday and a Wednesday at the community centre there. So yeah, they were silver cheerleading, and that was very popular there. And Tai Chi. So yes, I'm so aware that these people, a lot of them are on WhatsApp together, which I think is one way of them communicating. We've also produced probably 160 odd now videos. So with some of the familiar instructors that you've got there, the cheerleading ones are quite fun, the Pilates instructor. So we have done a lot of those videos for people, but we're just about to launch some Zoom with that same Pilates teacher from Crystal Palace, sorry, not what she is, Crystal Palace as well, but from the Elephant and Burgess Park. And I think it'll be interesting to see whether we can get that communication going again, because I think we'll probably limit it for Pilates to 15 people. So that you can get that social element going as well with their familiar instructors. So hopefully we will be able to, but I think we are going to do a bit of research with our members to actually find out. There's not a lot of research, is there, on, you know, how people are actually surviving, and we know that quite a few have had COVID. And I think we probably, because our average age of members in Silverfit is 70. So it's a very valuable community. We've got about 2,000 people who have signed up and joined up to Silverfit in, I forget my numbers, but about 17 different venues in London only. So yes, how they are coping, whether when they were coming out in twos, when we were in one stage of lockdown, we limited it to the rule of 6, and they did come out Nordic walking. So we were doing that until quite recently. And, you know, yes, rule of 6 with an instructor. And then we have quite a lot of qualified Nordic walk leaders as well, who can take another 5 people. So we built that up outdoors. Walking football is another quite popular thing for the guys, and that kept going at Crystal Palace. I don't think quite rule of 6, but that's...
We won't say anything.
I don't want to count.
No. You know, it's really interesting, Eddie, that, you know, over this lockdown, the one thing that most people have been not worried or anxious about, but the thing that they felt that came up most is loneliness. A lot of people are feeling very, very isolated. Now you talk about you have an average age of 70 years old for your community. A lot of people will have lost their partners and friends. It seems like a generational thing where people tend to forget. You know, it seems like people tend to forget about the people who've been before us, and that generation, your generation, had been through some stuff. You know, like literally babies of coming out of a world war, and the resilience that I look at your generation with, and I look at what you're doing, and I'm completely in awe. Especially, I want to get into the triathlon and what you're doing. But you know, we think, you know, again, the resilience of these people and the things that you're doing. But why do you think it is a thing that people just tend to forget? And they, you know, the younger generation, all the stuff that we have on, and younger. It seems like there is this disconnect from generation to generation rather than an acceptance and an interaction. And I'm just wondering, like, why do you think that is? And have you seen some beautiful bright spots where there have been young folk really interested in what you're doing and trying to help? Because, you know, I know loneliness is the number one thing that a lot of people in their 70s are concerned about.
Yeah. Yes, I think so. We also earlier last year set up what we called the Silverfit 10 Challenge, which was an intergenerational challenge. So you had to have 2 generations participating, locking up the miles or whatever. So a lot of it with grandparents, which was great fun. But I think, yes, that is certainly something I would want to encourage quite strongly. I think I don't know whether you've seen this book, The 100-Year Life. My goodness, I couldn't recommend it strongly enough, because what that is really saying is, you know, we are in the middle of an aging crisis where the number of younger people compared with the number of older people is changing very rapidly. I mean, it's changed in Japan a little bit before it's changing with us, but it is changing. And that's partly the sort of medical, you know, that's enabling us to live longer. But we have got to look at this. I mean, I heard one of the radio producers talk saying this is a bigger crisis than the climate crisis, is the aging population. And I think part of that will be, without any doubt, to captivate, to make the most of us, our age group, as we're moving on, that we don't just retire at whatever age, you know, we actually are going to keep going. We've got the knowledge, as long as we can stay healthy and relatively fit, you know, we can go on contributing. And that's probably one of the major solutions. So yes, we'll need the younger people who are far better on technology, as you know. You know, we'll need the benefits of AI, won't we, to help us on our way, even if we don't quite understand them. You know, who else couldn't turn on Zoom when I lost my picture? But how important is that we get that intergenerational with that expertise in AI and technology? And I think we've got to help. We know that in some of our venues, you know, up to 15% don't have either a mobile phone or a computer. So, you know, these are the people who are even more isolated that worry me. I'm certainly not disputing it, but I think we have got to look very hard at the aging population and how we help them to come together and to sort of understand more. I know you're doing that in a family way with the younger generation, and you know, we've seen this particularly, haven't we, in COVID, where they're not able to meet as they have been, and they're not all able to communicate on Zoom. Yeah.
I'm just like reminded of you know, my grandfather died when I was 16, I think, and he was like so special to me. And I was very close with him, and I would always ask him questions. But the older I get, you know, I'm almost 40, but I always think about, I wonder what he would say about this life choice right now, or I want to know more about his experience in the war, or like this man was a World War II prisoner. Like I'm just so have all these questions, and I just hearing you talk, and even the question Nick asked is like, what could we do if we would just like the generations would just chat? And I've seen it on BBC a couple of times when the pandemic started, like young kids would go to veterans or older people and ask them questions. Like there's so much wisdom around life that we're not giving we cannot recognize as wisdom. We can just forget, or like
Yeah.
not see it as part of the importance of now. Because I mean, what I did, or what I've realized I'm doing, is when I'm feeling overwhelmed and kind of like can't grasp or can't see the next step with this pandemic and lockdown, is I've actually been watching World War I and World War II like documentaries and movies, because it's like gives me a bit of perspective in terms of, I don't know if that's morbid or not, but it is actually helping me like this is a world thing that's happening.
Yeah.
To really like lock in with each other, right?
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
want to share.
Yeah. But I think maybe it's helping us to recognize, what is important. It'll be very interesting how we emerge from this and the differences that it will have made for all of us. Yeah. My grandmother, interestingly, was Winston Churchill's cook throughout the war. So
she kept him alive.
Yes, no, he credits her with that totally. He said that many times. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, he would just be cigars and whiskey.
Wow.
Yeah, well, yes, and the wine or whatever, yes. No, but he took her out onto the balcony in Whitehall with all the crowds and made her come out too. And, without you, I wouldn't be here, sort of thing. So.
I don't even know what to do with that. I'm done.
It's interesting that my experience with watching my parents get older, which is that they because of cultural expectations that they're taught from factory working and coal mine working, we're punching in, making a buck. The man goes to work, the woman does this. All these kind of pigeonholes that we're stuck into, right? Yeah. And then the man doesn't spend as much time at home. The kids feel the band. Yeah. All of this kind of mess that's going on. Yeah. And retirement killed my parents. Both of my parents passed early because when they retired, they lost their sense of purpose. They thought their purpose was to retire and to be grandparents and to enjoy each other's company, when really they lost their purpose as educators, as organizers, as having some kind of self-worth. Yeah. And I think that we're in a point now where like really trying to undo all these cultural norms and expectations that you've been through, that your parents went through, that my parents went through, that my grandparents went through. And it comes down to this thing of just talking, right? Of going, why do we have to do the way that they did it? Why can't we just mix things up a bit?
I think how, we got a lot of Sport England funding to look at people who were retiring. And we could actually see that, women had probably maintained their network, those that had been working, of friends of, parents of the kids at school and that sort of thing. It was men that worried me in a sense of that generation, hence the walking football, but hence a very specific male orientated thing, because I think that's right. We are very different, and that's what that 100 years is doing. It's taking 3 generations. So it's got one figure that's my age, one that's your age, and one that's a 22-year-old. And it's looking at their life expectancy, because, mine will go to 90 according to that. But, the younger one will probably go over 100. So how are we going to use that 4th age, call it what you will? But, we're going past the average age of 70 now, aren't we? So, very different.
So it's this thing about like loneliness, but work, how do we keep jobs going? How do we find, and I mean, I think I love what Melissa, like just being able to put people into a place to be advisors and consultants and be like, go and absorb all that experience, that is out there, instead of just, put them into a home, let them just, absorb, and we'll figure it out ourselves. Well, I don't want to, I want to be taught, Yeah.
And I think systems have got to start accepting that, and probably the retirement age, the pension age has been something that has been seen as a fixture, but actually, no, you're absolutely right. We can do more. We've got a lot of background history and knowledge, haven't we? Yeah.
Even like the beauty and power and community around storytelling, right? Even if you are an 80-year-old person whose kind of mindset is very different than maybe your 20-year-old niece or nephew, it's like the sharing of the story and your experience which keeps us connected. You know, my greatest teacher, apart from my grandfather, was an 80-year-old man I met when I was 21 and sick. And just through his able to create spaces of safety for me that I couldn't get elsewhere, was changed my whole life. And if that happened for me, I know it happened for other people, and it will continue to happen for people. But it just feels like we need a bit of a almost spiritual paradigm shift into what aging looks like. You know, I heard this quote, or I didn't hear it, I read it. Not a quote, it's from a book I'm reading. But he says that, you know, we're not so much afraid of dying. Like, we think we're afraid of death, but really, if you break it down, what we're afraid of is how to take the risks in order to feel fully alive. You know, and I think a lot of this like paradigm around us living is because we're just living with the intention that death is coming, but to what we were speaking before, the quality of it counts, not how you can live to 100 and have it empty, right? Or you can live to 45 and just go with it, make it the wildest ride of your life. I think that kind of like
us social workers ought to be directing in that direction, didn't we, more?
Absolutely. It's more of this like, I wonder maybe what is your understanding or your approach to health? Because you are somebody who at 50, you know, you started this, I'm wrong, I might be wrong with the dates, but but in terms of how you see health and your relationship with health in terms of yourself and the community, and now with waiting for a vaccine and a pandemic, and kind of, what is your understanding of the importance of what health is for us now? Or
I think there's a dramatic link between physical activity and health. You know, that's one of the reasons that I got into exercise myself at the age of 50, was when a doctor said that, you know, if you can get going premenopausal, you know, you are going to make a big difference to your bone strength, your muscle strength. And that's how I started at what, you know, by most people's terms would be quite a late stage in life at 50 odd. But my goodness, you can see it now. You know, the impact on the brain, for instance, the research that's coming through on that is that if you are physically active, then you are less likely, you know, to have the dementia problems, or they may be less severe. What is interesting is at the moment, the lack of research in relation to COVID. You know, there hasn't been any that I'm aware of, and I keep asking, you know, because it's a question of looking at the history of the people who have died or haven't died, who've had it or haven't had it. And that doesn't exist yet in terms of how physically active they are. It may come, but it's an interesting, you know, how do you get your control sample in research terms on that one?
That's a whole conversation.
But it will come, and I think, you know, being active is not, it's partly about the social element, as I've said, in your community work, but it is also about, you know, a bit of movement and you know, getting out. I think Part Run is the most brilliant organization that, you know, you can do any pace of 5K, can't you? You can walk it at the end. Absolutely inspirational. You know, that's what's missing at the moment, isn't it? Some of us are trying to do sort of virtual stuff, but
I'll tell you what, Eddie, though, like you've taken physical exercise to another level, because you do the triathlon, which is like cycling, swimming, and running. And the when I watch the Olympics or when I watch triathlon on TV, it's the one sport, you know, and I'm an ex-professional athlete, but it's the one sport that makes me cringe. It makes me go, oh, I could never do that. The wet water, then the water into the sand, running to the bike, and then putting the shoes on. And I'm like, literally, what if I get sand in my shoes on the bike? And then what if I get sand in my crotch while I'm sitting on the bike? All these things. I'm like, what an uncomfortable sport. Eddie, why on earth would you put yourself through it?
Well, I started off running, but I have, quite significant injuries on both my knees. I don't have an ACL, that sort of cross in the front of your knee in either of them, and some arthritis. So, I was fairly strongly advised by a physio and a consultant to sort of do plenty of strength training in my thighs and my calves. And I think that's one of the things that got me into swimming. It's not my favorite activity. I don't think I swam at all until I was sort of late 50s. Sort of half a width of breaststroke was all I ever did.
Yeah. I'm not getting my head wet.
I'm still slow. I watch other people swimming along, overtaking me like that. My kids, when I did London triathlon, which is great, it's in the Victoria Dock and fantastic triathlon, but they were watching from the Excel building and they said they could pick me out because of my slow cadence.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Still not my favorite. I do love the bike and the biking. And lockdown, I had an indoor fitness bike thing, and I spent hours and hours on Swift. And I think that kept me going, if I'm honest, through lockdown. It was so vital to be able to get that physical activity on, not necessarily a good bike, but also not a very expensive trainer, turbo thing. We're talking quite a small amount of money for that, relatively, compared with posh bikes and that sort of thing. But yeah, that mileage on Swift, it's a brilliant program. So I think, yeah, and important.
With the triathlon that you're getting ready for, what are the distances for it?
3-point-something swim, K, 3.25, 180 kilometers on the bike, and then a marathon.
Yeah, that's the full triathlon.
10, yeah, that's an Ironman. I've done 10 of them. Oh. Sorry, I've started off in 10 and I've only finished 6.
Only
6.
Yeah, the last
Eddie,
one. Go on.
Sorry. Where do you find where do you find the drive?
My question.
Where do you want to?
What's the mind talk? Sorry, Nick. I'm just fascinated by this too. Like, what's happening inside for you?
I think it's quite important that a lot of it I do with other people. So I'm a member in London of Serpentine Running Club. I'll meet somebody at the swimming pool, and that's what makes you go. I can remember the running in Pimlico, that it was the fact that I was meeting friends at 7 o'clock in the morning that got me up and got me going to go to Battersea Park, So I think that sort of social drive is quite important in motivation. I just do enjoy it. I did Louise Minchin's breakfast telly, her, 150-mile bike ride on Swift, and I remember it was quite sociable. You could see the other people that were doing it, their names and the sort of, the sort of shape of them going down the road. Can't think of the word. But actually, you finish and, you're on virtual communications as well. And it's fun. So I actually think that word fun is the most important word of the lot. I remember talking at a conference, I think for the BBC up in Manchester, and I was on at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. No one up until then, talking about sport and exercise, had used the word fun. And you think, what? Don't you realise how important that is?
And it's like an actual conversation I had with myself this morning. I'm like, wait, am I like doing body movement and work because I think I ate too much the day before? Or am I doing it because I want to build this vessel and honor it and have fun with it? And like, it's a functioning machine. Like, can I get to know it better rather than almost, it seems like exercise and activities almost like a punishment. We've kind of been programmed to think like something. Where it can be a thing that we can use like in relationship with our own betterment and our own getting to know ourselves. That's my own kind of journey.
No, I understand. Yeah.
I don't have to curse it all.
Eddie, I used to play professional ice hockey in this country.
Yes,
and
I saw
my journey was, you know, brought me to some places. But this morning, I did a talk with some students at Brunel University, and one of them asked me that question. They said, Nick, when you were playing professional, were you having fun? And it knocked me for six. I was like, what? And I went, and I had to think about it. I went, no, playing professional sport, I was not having fun. I was being, the coaches punished you for not doing well. You know, I didn't feel connected. I felt like I was doing it just to make money, or just to, you know, just a means to an end. And they said, when did you, and then they made me reflect to when I actually had fun. And it was when I was a kid growing up on a frozen ice rink in Saskatchewan, playing with one buddy of mine, 4 hours past school. So our parents had to come and get us and be like, you're late for dinner. That's when I had fun. Yeah. And it really made me think about, you know, why do we play sports? And a lot of it is because of like vanity, to get in shape, to look a certain way, but we don't play. We're doing it. It's a chore. And I love how you said, you know, it's about having fun. And if we can find an activity and get ourselves into a place where, you also talked about accountability. And that's something that we try to teach too, is that I'm more incentivized to get up and to meet people at 7 o'clock in the morning if I'm there with people who understand me and are like encouraging us to do things. That's kind of just an observation of what you were saying, is we need to get into places to play, have fun, and be accountable with people.
Yeah.
So Eddie, like moving forward, you know, we'll be coming out of another lockdown soon. I don't know if I can ask you how young you are. Is that offensive?
Oh God, yeah, no, everybody knows. I've got another month until I'm 78. I'm 77 at the moment. So Joe Biden is about 3 months older than me, I think. And that's been very interesting to watch the sort of response, not only to him at his age, but, you know, the fact that he's got to have a successor, and that the successor is really important at his age. So you think, yes. Okay.
Well, can you take over from Johnson? Because I would have you in a second over our Prime Minister here. So
you're not expecting me to comment on that, are you?
Eddie for Prime Minister. You have any political aspirations?
When I was never allowed to get into politics, it is one of my regrets, if I'm honest. Because my husband was a senior local authority, so he was head of highways planning, that sort of thing, and so I could not be in politics as his wife. You know, that was fairly clear. And at his funeral, some of the Labour Party politicians asked me, "Come on, Eddie, now you can," and I couldn't.
Yeah. Oh. I'd vote for you.
Yeah.
Eddie, what do you think? You know, I recognize, no, we're good for time. What do you think, what kind of kept you going? I mean, in the social worker in the 70s, I don't know about you, but like my heart's been broken 100,000 times in just social work itself, right? I've had like heartbreak after heartbreak. And I know in your life, you've experienced heartbreak after heartbreak. And I'm wondering, what do you come back to? What keeps you, who are some of your teachers or your teachings, and what keeps you anchored and moving forward? I made that sound so depressing, but it's also coming from a place of just, I'm feeling very inspired. That's where it's coming from.
I think watching, and my research, you know, I did quite a lot of research. I've always been into data and data analysis. And I think when I did my research on the adopted children, 130 of them, I was so impressed 10 years down the line, 15 years, how well those kids would have done. You know, I knew their backgrounds, I knew exactly. And to see the way in which those families had helped those kids, I thought was absolutely fantastic. So, you know, there are positives, aren't there, in social work? Yes, I mean, it's a really tough decision when children come away from home. Of course it is, you know, I would underestimate that. And I thought it was very interesting when Harry Burns, who was the Scottish Medical Officer of Health, when he retired a year, 2 or 3 years ago, he also said, you know, the most important were the early attachments that you have in life. And, you know, that's not fair, is it, when some kids just don't have those early quality attachments that probably are far more important than we've ever really acknowledged that much. So yeah, I mean, it is tough, and yeah, it's not an equal society, and I think we're getting evidence of that now, aren't we, with the lockdown? You know, that the inequalities there again are quite stark, aren't they? Yeah.
Just in you saying that, it's made me think about how can we help, you know, parents and guardians and people who are at work and in the corporate environments to like, I've got to work hard to provide, to put money on to get a holiday, or can I just pull back a little bit and take a few hours to get back to the family and spend some more quality time with the family? And I think that is what really resonates with me with what you're saying, is that we could be at the grindstone, at the coalface, and work our butts off. But what are we losing from the connection of the family unit? Because we're aspiring to obtain certain things that society says that we need us to have to look successful, when really success is maybe just spending a little bit more time with your family. Thank you for making me thank you for bringing that for my thoughts of what's needed at this moment. I think that we need a lot of compassion right now. For one another, and I think that, you know, you are truly inspiring, and I'm just in awe of you and what you're doing. And I would like to, I think, you know, Melissa was alluding to is what are the next few months? What's the next little bit of time going to look like for you?
I think on a Silverfit, it's really trying to work out how we can go forward as fast as we can, really. So if we are still rule of 6 and outdoor only, for instance, then we apply as much as we can into that, and then look at reopening. And it's great because Delancey have come back with where we would be able to go back to in the Elephant and Castle. So, you know, to get that whole, I like Southwark. I think, you know, in a sense, it's not our only venues, but I think it has been really important. So I'm really grateful to Get Living Delancey as well for helping us get on the way there. And I'm sure they're going to stick by us. They want us to go to the East Village, of course, which is the other asset, as you probably know. Now, what fun's that going to be in the East Village with the Olympic Park there? You know, I can't wait. It's all part of the legacy, isn't it, that I started Silverfit with, you know, coming down the Lee Valley. So
I want to know if we can get in the velodrome. Maybe we could spin a bike around there a few times.
Oh, yes.
That would be awesome. I would stage you on a race, but I don't want to get beaten.
I have done it once. It's quite scary, isn't it, going up that? Yeah. We could go on the path outside, because even that's been beautifully designed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I really.
I would really like to kind of offer, you know, anything that we can do, really. If you, I would really like to work with you guys going forward, and I want to learn, I want to listen, and I, you know, to maybe, I would love to come to some of your spaces, and talk to folks, and I really feel like there's a lot of synergy here in what you're doing. I'm truly inspired by you. Yeah.
And I thought that when I looked at your website, I actually thought, hang on, you are really actually doing something that the social worker in me, we're not doing in Silverfit yet. But if we could work together, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
That was my social worker nod. I don't know why I did that, but
what does it?
I just
Captain.
It was just a recognition of it. Because I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? It's like the multidisciplinary, like holistic approach to health, fitness, to our bodies, to whatever age we're at. It's like, how do we honor wherever we're at with our body, right?
Yeah. Right. We'll get together in the East Village then.
There we go.
And the Elephant Castle, sorry.
Yes. Sounds good. Eddie, how can people get in touch with you? And I will post any links that you need us to do into the Facebook page, but just for people who are listening now, if they need to get in touch with you, or if they're inspired by your story in Silverfit, what are the links or anything that you'd like people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, my own is edwina@silverfit.org.uk or info@silverfit.org.uk. I can't remember whether it's my Instagram or Twitter that's Irongran. Isn't that awful that I can't remember? But I am 77, you know. And one of them is at Eddie Brocklesby. So I think it must be the Instagram that's Irongran _Irongran. Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eddie, for
You're
chatting
welcome.
with us today. Melissa?
Cheers. Thank you.
It's been an honor. I can't wait to continue the conversation.
Great. Lovely. Thank you both very much.
Amazing.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye. And thank you, people at the What's on Elephant Castle Facebook page. Please join us at 11 a.m. this Thursday. We're going to be doing a workshop around boundaries. So we'll post the link and everything, all the information about that. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. And thank you again, Edwina.
Cheers.
Bye.